In this tutorial, we're looking at the lower back pains you're not doing, and we're going to focus on 3 types of back pain: flexion intolerance or intolerant, extension intolerant, and compression intolerant. Now, all of this is within my online course, which you can find if you go to the link in the description below, or we can obviously go through it with coaching. So it's the online course plus coaching, which again will be in the description, or link will be in the description below. Now, what we are looking to do is first of all assess the spine. So we need to understand, is it a flexion, extension, or compression intolerance? Then we can start to go about building in the exercises that you need to be doing. The first type of back pain is flexion intolerance. Now, what is that? Well, essentially, it's in the name. Your spine can't tolerate being in the flexed position. And as it says here, that could be from postures like sitting down as she's doing here, at a desk, at the computer, in the car, on the sofa, just sat on the floor in the park, with friends, whatever. It doesn't like these flexion postures. It also doesn't like it when you do it with exercise. So that would be exercises like the sit-ups, like crunches. Even if you're doing a squat or a deadlift and your spine is flexing, it won't like that. So it could be the mechanism. So just by removing the flexed spine whilst you sit, so that and adding in the neutral spine, which is essentially you've got the lumbar spine, the thoracic spine, and the cervical spine. So that's with those 3 curves in it. So we maintain that whilst we sit down. But it also might be the duration of sitting. So we are changing the posture not only to be in a healthy posture with regards to the spine, but we're also doing it from an endurance perspective, because you might find that the pain comes on after 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it might be. So if we can remove these types of postures by using the neutral spine posture, what we can start to do is, in a sense, remove the trigger of the pain. So we're taking the trigger away, which is the flexed spine. Now, how we do that is we use this neutral posture. So we use the neutral spine against flexion intolerance. Now, how do you understand whether you've got flexion intolerance? Well, that is something that we would look at in the consultation and the assessment. Obviously, you've got the self-guided one, which is all done via the online course, which are tutorials that take you through a set of questions and a set of assessments, and they not only assess your spine, but you understand the mechanisms within the spine through the questions that you've answered as well. Obviously, I can take you through that with the coaching as well. Again, just click the links below. But what we can also do is use abdominal bracing. So in one of the tests, I get you into a posture which could provoke the pain. What I can then do is put you back in that posture, brace your abdominals, and if it removes the pain, we know we've got a strategy. So we know that we've got the neutral posture and we've got the abdominal brace to remove that trigger. So even if we go into a flex posture, we've got the abdominal brace as an extra layer of protection against the flexion pain trigger. The next one is the hip hinge. Now, when we hip hinge, what we're essentially doing, if I just draw a hip down here, essentially we are maintaining this neutral curve as we hinge forward, so as we bend forward. So what will happen is the pelvis will tip forward, but we will maintain these natural curves. So when we tip forward, we aren't bending from the spine and the pelvis staying in position. So we can use this hip hinge again as we are lifting, bending, carrying, to be able to maintain greater health within the spine and remove the flexion out of the spine so we can cope with it for longer. And then finally, as I've mentioned, we can begin a sitting program, which is essentially, if your pain comes on after 5 minutes, if you can get yourself up after 4 minutes, walk around, do a bit of stretching of the hips, sit back down again for another 4 minutes, and you've experienced no pain for those 8 minutes you've been sat down. We've improved the health of your spine and your ability to sit down just by simply using a neutral spine, an abdominal brace. You can use a hip hinge as you get up out of the seat, and then walk around, sit back down using all those principles, and then you will go some way to removing that trigger. Second is the extension intolerance. Now that is essentially the opposite. Your spine doesn't like being in this hyperextended posture or this hyperextended posture. So you might find yourself doing that. Again, it could be just everyday postures. You could find yourself doing it just in a standing posture where you have sort of a sway back posture through here. If for whatever reason you're led on your front watching TV, you may find a little pinch in the lower part of your back. All these different types of things. Now again, this will get assessed during the consultation, during the assessment, so we can identify that in the online course and the coaching. But for now, what we want to do, very much like flexion intolerance, we want to avoid extension postures and exercises. So certainly taking out back extensions and any exercises like that, because it's only going to irritate. Because if we understand the mechanism to be extension, the last thing we want to be doing as a part of our therapy is extension exercises, because essentially that's not a therapy. That's just triggering the mechanism of injury, which is essentially an injury. So that back extension exercise would be an injury or an injury mechanism. So again, how can we remove these? Well, we can maintain more of a neutral posture. So we may need to adapt certain postures. So we may need to look at your standing posture and using mirrors and so on and so forth to bring the hips back to get you in that much more upright posture, if that's the hips there and the head there, to be much more upright. Obviously we'll have the three curves of the spine here, but essentially what we're looking for is just getting the hips back so the hips are over the heels or over the midfoot and the heels. So we're using or getting you out of that mechanism, that extension mechanism. Again, what we can do is we can abdominally brace. So if you find that you're in this position, this standing position, and you get that pinch at the lower part of the back, what you can do is you can, which is one of the assessments, you can lift a knee, and if that improves the pain or reduces the pain, what we start to understand is that there could well be some instability through the hip and the lumbar spine. So what we can then start doing is using the abdominal brace to stabilize the area to then be able to reduce that pain. So this is a little bit more of exercise based rather than just everyday postures based. But essentially what we're looking to do is stabilize the hip and the spine, if that is the mechanism. If you just get pain lying down, then there may not be some instability through the spine. It could just be you're irritating the facet joints. There could be problems with the disc. It all depends. If you come into the standing position, you push your hips forward, you get pain. You come back, you lift the knee up, you push your hips forward again, and you get less pain. Then it's stabilizing the hip and the spine, and we would use exercises to do that. So we have to focus on the mechanism, which is going to be choosing the exercises that we do. Again, as I mentioned, if it's lying down, it's going to be different than if it's standing up. If we get pain standing up, we want to be stabilizing the hip, stabilizing the spine. Finally, we have compression intolerance, and all that basically means is when you've got your spine, so I'm just going to draw a spine here, and then you've got muscles going up either side. Now, when we do certain exercises, they contract and they will compress around the spine. So imagine you're holding a sponge in your fist and you squeeze it as tight as you can. That's essentially what compression is around the spine. Now, if you are standing and you hold a weight, doesn't have to be a heavy weight, but you hold a weight away from your body and you start to get pain in your lower back, then that's a sign of compression intolerance. So we want to avoid heavy lifting and bracing, because bracing is essentially it's stabilizing the spine and adding compression around it. So we want to manage, as it says here, we want to avoid heavy lifting because that's going to make us brace. but we want to adapt the abdominal brace, which would probably mean adapting any lifting that we do just to lighten it. What that is then doing is causing these muscles not to contract as much, which is then putting less pressure on the spine. So we've got exercises like deadlift and squat. So deadlift you can see here. We're looking at neutral postures. So we want neutral posture through here. We want to adapt the abdominal brace again to reduce the compression around the spine. And then finally, we want to be keeping objects close to the body. Now, what this is doing is, if we go back to this standing posture, and I'll come on to the image in a minute, when this weight is close to us, this lever is much shorter and it puts less stress on the muscles of the lower back. As I start moving the weight away, the lever becomes much longer, which adds extra pressure to these muscles. So if this gentleman here had this kettlebell out here and tried to lift it, it's going to put more pressure on his lower back than if he's doing what he's doing here and putting it in between his heels, or his midfoot to his heels. Because this here, so we've got lower back is essentially there, so we've got a lever that's only this long. Again, if we keep it away, we've got a lever that is this long. So again, we want to be managing where we put the objects that we're lifting. So if it's shopping bags, we want to be having them, it may be on the outside of the feet, but we want to be having them right back here, not out here. So it's being able to, first of all, identify the type of lower back pain that you have. Once you identify the type of lower back pain that you have, you can then identify the type of exercises that you need to be doing. And if you identify you have flexion intolerance, we avoid certain postures and exercises, and then we can start doing certain postures and exercises. If it's extension intolerance, it's exactly the same. We remove these back extension postures. We may not lie down in front of the TV and sort of lift our chest off the floor or anything like that, or even yoga poses. We may avoid doing those, and we need to then add in modified exercises or modified postures, and it's exactly the same with compression. We may just adapt what we're doing to be able to lift, to not put as much compression on the spine, and therefore maintain the health of the spine and give ourselves the best opportunity for our spine to heal. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris from Chris Pole Training. I will speak to you in the next tutorial.